You're now listening to the Publisher Underground, presented by Pulsepoint. Thanks for joining us. I'm Joe Gegan. I'm the Content Studio Coordinator at Digiday, and I'll be your moderator today. This webinar is going to be a bit different from what you're used to seeing. We're not going to lecture you about theories and concepts. Instead, we're going to have a frank and honest discussion about how real-world publishers are benefiting from private marketplaces, audience packaging, and header bidding, an advanced programmatic technique in which publishers offer inventory to multiple ad exchanges simultaneously before making calls to their ad servers. The conversation will be hosted by Chris Muhlenbach, Head of Product for Pulsepoint. He oversees Pulsepoint's display, mobile, video, and native lines of business. Chris previously managed programmatic product and yield for Condé Nast's 21 brands, including Wired, Vogue, GQ, and The New Yorker. Chris also held significant positions at OpenX, The Washington Post, and ESPN. Pulsepoint is a programmatic advertising technology platform that's redefining digital advertising. Whether you're a publisher, advertiser, or tech partner offering standard ads or branded content, Pulsepoint's programmatic platforms distribute and optimize it all. Chris will be interviewing Paul Bannister, Head of Sales at Cafe Media, running both direct and programmatic sales. He has over 20 years' experience in digital media and has worked in all aspects of the industry, including technology, marketing, editorial, product development, and now sales. Cafe Media is among the leading premium publishers that is leaning into programmatic sales, header bidding, and private marketplaces. After the conversation, we'll be joined by Matt Wheatland, who is the U.S. Director of Programmatic at DailyMail.com, for an open and in-depth Q&A. DailyMail.com is the world's largest English-language newspaper site, reaching 250 million global uniques and generating billions of monthly ad opportunities. With 24-hour coverage of breaking news and showbiz gossip, DailyMail.com publishes 1,000 articles a day, posts 10,000 photos a day, and boasts an average time on site of 11 minutes. Now, without further ado, let's get this started. This is the Publisher Underground.
Don't touch that dial.
Are we on the air?
Yes, you are. 1 minute you're up $500,000 in soybeans, and the next, boom, your kids don't go to college and they've repossessed your country.
No, you better ask somebody.
Ask many of today's digital publishers what their biggest challenges are, and you are going to hear a common refrain: growing an audience while producing high-quality editorial content in a very competitive environment. While editorial is focused on creating content to engage and grow their user base, heads of sales are tasked with increasing display ad revenues by an aggressive %, and they're wondering how they're going to hit their goal in today's marketplace. As brands continue to allocate chunks of their ad buying programmatically, both through RTV and guaranteed deals, it's becoming increasingly important for publishers to balance a mixture of direct sold and programmatic premium inventory, ensuring maximum fill and high CPMs. While the waterfall was the earliest programmatic implementation method and still remains the most common, our experience with waterfalling has shown it to be more of a trickle than a cascade, rarely netting publishers the highest amount offered for impressions. Discrepancies are commonplace, and dedicated teams are required to manage complicated ad trafficking processes. In fact, a recent poll conducted by Pulsepoint and Digiday showed that 89% of publishers agree that the current waterfall, or daisy chain model of buying, is far from ideal. Despite the fact that the waterfall was designed to help publishers access more sources of revenue, the buyers actually hold much of the power. They get to decide which impressions they buy. In the past, the publishers' ad servers made those decisions as they assigned which impressions the buyers would get. For these publishers to improve their inventory performance and help advertisers achieve the best results through programmatic, they need to level the playing field. By its very nature, the waterfall can never offer that. This isn't the first time publishers have been forced to evolve alongside major industry change, and it most certainly won't be the last. By 2018, more than 80% of display ad dollars will be transacted programmatically. Publishers that adapt to a new way of doing business and embrace the innovation it spurs will be the ones that reap the benefits. So that leaves us with a deceptively simple question. How can publishers take back control, not simply to survive, but thrive in a programmatic world? I'm Chris Muhlenbach, Head of Product at Pulsepoint, and I'm here to help publishers figure this out. Today I'll be talking to Paul Bannister, EVP at Cafe Media, a digital publisher with brands that reflect the experiences of women. Hi, Paul. Thanks for joining us. Can I please have you introduce yourself to our listeners?
Sure. I'm Paul Bannister. I'm the head of sales at Cafe Media, running programmatic and direct sales.
So for today's conversation, we want to go ahead and talk about how buyers have been put in a position of power. What was the first sign of a swing toward buyer control in the digital environment?
I think it's hard for me to say what the first sign was because it happened so kind of incrementally and slowly over time where you didn't actually realize that it was happening until one day you turned around and saw these sort of demands coming in that were, very, very specific and very difficult to meet. And then when you look back, you said, oh my God, this was coming, and you didn't even see it coming.
Okay, what were some of those examples? Like things that spring to mind for me are like viewability or I must have high impact units.
We had a request from an advertiser last year where for video pre-roll, where they wanted Hispanic audience, Spanish language, 100% viewability, 100% completion rate, sound on, and a number of other metrics for a price that was half what we could potentially offer it for. And that was kind of the moment when we said, this is too much. This isn't working. And by the way, to you, advertiser, good luck. I'm excited that you can get that price somewhere else. But that was kind of for us when we said, wow, like this has really changed where the demands are very high and our ability to deliver sometimes doesn't exist because we can't do those things. I do think that one good thing that's come out of all this is what I hope and see as being kind of a race to quality, where one of the things we did is really get everything we do in really good shape, where we got our viewability to be great. We got our understood our demos really well and what our audience really was in different parts of our properties, and made sure that we could put together packages that were clear and compelling and could meet as many of those requests as possible from advertisers. And that's helped us a lot. So I think part of it was kind of getting ourselves into a really good position. I think part of it is putting together or getting technologies in place that helped us serve them better as well.
So were those programmatic? Were those on the direct sold side? Like where are those technologies come from? Where are they being deployed?
I think it's been both for us. And to some level, I think, and we'll get into this in a minute, but I think, to some level, header bidding particularly has made for the way we think about it. We think about programmatic and direct very similar a lot of the time. We're dealing directly with advertisers. We are understanding what their needs are. We're delivering them good audiences and inventory. And whether they're giving us an IO or they're buying programmatically via header bidding, we want them to work the same way. So we're trying to blend the two together and make it work well.
What about like in the open exchange environment? Like, was there any difference that you saw maybe in programmatic environments versus maybe in the direct sold environments?
I think so. I think that, in the programmatic in the beginning in the open market, it was very much viewed as remnant and was priced that way. So even inventory that we had that was good quality that just happened not to be sold was getting bought at bottom of the barrel prices, and that obviously isn't great for us. So I think that that was something that we saw that was a problem that we wanted to rectify and make it so our inventory that was good inventory that just wasn't sold was getting a fair value.
What's been the most problematic symptom of this shift in control to you and to your publication?
Partly it is the operations required to manage it and to get things square and make it so you can deliver these things. It's become you really have to become an expert in this in a very deep way that I think 3 or 4 years ago you could kind of get along with just having good relationships and being a good salesperson. Now you really have to know the technology, know the audience, know all the things really inside and out, which is a great thing, but it is a challenge to get yourself and teams in that direction.
Yeah, so how has Cafe Media been addressing like the need to go ahead and kind of spread programmatic knowledge throughout the organization? Is there a dedicated programmatic team, or is everyone responsible for understanding and mastering programmatic?
On the sales side, we've been training the sellers to be able to sell both. Often they're talking to media teams or strategy teams that control often the direct and programmatic budget. So we want to make sure that they're fully trained in terms of being able to talk about both offerings. So that's been a process over the last really 18 to 24 months of getting them to be able to have that conversation. And it's, I think some are very good, some are getting there, and it's a process, while at the same time having some programmatic expertise that really can come in and talk about the real specifics of why you should work this way or what you should be doing with us. So it's a little bit of both, and really trying to get the teams up to a level, but having the experts at the same time.
Do you see CPMs rising as a result of these kind of increased technologies, this additional training that you're deploying?
Absolutely. It's been a massive change in the last 18 months for us where I don't have an exact number, but it's tripled or quadrupled in a lot of cases where the CPMs are moving in the right direction. And I think for the advertisers, I think that they're getting the best quality impressions this way and being able to pick and choose what they want and overlay their data and getting a lot of great benefits out of it, where what they're getting on the direct side is really no different than what they're getting on the programmatic side from publishers like us.
That mirrors what we're seeing at Pulsepoint as well across the exchange with our more premium publishers, those who are able to go ahead and make a more sophisticated pitch, who are able to go ahead and better leverage the technology, those who are able to understand and then to sell private marketplace deals are moving the needle and seeing the benefits of that. And so it's really good to hear that that's working also at Cafe Media. So you're making these decisions with regard to your platform decisioning, how to package and sell the inventory. To what degree do you have your own best interest in mind when you're going out there and making these changes?
I mean, one good thing that programmatic and again header bidding brings to that specifically is the fact that oftentimes we don't even have to worry about our best interest that much. The system takes care of it for us. If we have people that are bidding low prices and they're not winning, that doesn't really affect me because I have people who are bidding higher prices and are winning. So the system is taking care of any cases where people are not paying what we think the inventory is worth, and people who do understand what the inventory is worth are paying the right amount for it. So that's been kind of a great thing where people come to us and they say, well, I want to set up a private marketplace at this price, and we say, okay, we can do that for you, but you're not really going to win many impressions at that price. We'll take that because it may be made a way to grow the relationship or you'll just get started. But we almost don't even have to look out for ourselves in that case because we have the people who are saying, yeah, we understand what this is worth. We know what your audience is worth. We know what these people are doing. We know why we want to reach them, and we want to pay this price. And we say that's fantastic, and that's going to work for us. And let's get going.
It sounds great that you have the technology that can essentially self-manage the stack, that you could just trust that you're getting the best eCPM, but I don't think that's the way it always was. If you go ahead and go back, especially kind of even pre-programmatic, when kind of like that traditional waterfall was in place, the fact of the matter is that it was one platform, and then the next set of demand pool, then the next set of demand pools would go ahead and kind of like waterfall ever downward and everything, and that, from my recollection, required a lot of kind of like manual manipulation. Oh, the eCPM of this pool on this particular set of inventory is higher, but that's different than my other website that I have for moms versus dads. Is the management of the stack simpler as a result?
I would say that it is simpler, although it is kind of combined with other reasons why it's getting simpler. Automation is existing more and more where not only is the way we've set up our stack simpler and kind of easier to manage, but we're also building many more tools ourselves that let us automate, order creation and things like that make it so we actually have more business now than we did 2 years ago, but our ad ops team has actually gotten a little bit smaller. So things like that are helping us, but I think that's kind of a combination of factors that's going in there.
Earlier, you were talking about how programmatic can really bring complexity to the sales conversation. That is, the buyers can have a long list of demands. Talk to me about how that compares to the days kind of like pre-programmatic.
I think to some level, probably the easiest way that I can think about it is thinking about the media plans, where we were putting together media plans for buyers that were, a $500,000 deal, but that plan had within it hundreds of different line items for different creatives and different targeting tactics and different strategies for this and monthly flighting and geo-targeting and all these different things that became extremely cumbersome to set all those things up. And not only that, when I think about the bigger picture, not only were we setting that up on our side, but the agency was setting that up on their side also. So there was this massive duplication of work going on, massive amounts of manual labor, literally keying in one by one all these different line items that needed to be set up and targeted and managed. Where now, on the direct side, things are getting simpler there, I think, for one, but for two, programmatic makes it a lot easier where the buyer sets it up on their side and then it just kind of often, again, runs on our side where we've got to monitor, we've got to stay on top of things, but we don't need to do all this massive amounts of setup for each and every campaign that runs through. It's funny for us as kind of a medium to large publisher, not enormous, where when programmatic really started taking off, we didn't actually get into it that much. I think partly it was the buyer control issues. I think partly it was the feeling that it was remnant and we didn't want to put ourselves out there that way. And partly it just felt like it wasn't very incremental. It was like, why am I going to do work and give up control of things to make a few extra pennies? And that didn't feel worthwhile to me. So while I won't say we didn't do anything, I would say we didn't do much in that world because of the fact that I think programmatic early on was not well suited to the needs of, I think, most people. I think if you were an utterly enormous site with billions of remnant impressions every day, sure, that makes sense. And you can turn your 27-cent remnant CPM into 42 cents. Like, that's amazing, and that's a massive change. That's not where we were. And if I was making that 15 cents extra on a small number of impressions, I didn't care enough to want to move ahead with that.
Yeah, for those publishers who are flirting with 80+% sell-throughs, like, why rush in to go ahead and create potentially sales channel conflict?
Exactly, and it felt like there were a lot of questions and there were very few answers, and it didn't feel like a lot of what was being done was to represent the publishers, and it didn't feel like it was a good fit for what our needs were at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the advantages of having programmatic having played out over the years, and also likewise having the platforms having grown more sophisticated over time, is that you're able to go and I think better manage those kind of potential conflicts. We see that there's often unique budgets between direct sales and then all the different flavors of programmatic, be they private marketplace, automated guaranteed, or the open exchange. Each of those are often unique budgets as assigned by the CMO, saying 30% goes here, 15% there.
Exactly, and that's a good point actually that we talk about a lot, is the idea that we're sort of agnostic at this point. We want to be open for business any way that a buyer wants to come to us. So whether it is PMP or open market or direct deal or automated guaranteed or any number of other possibilities that are out there, we want to say we're available and we can do this. And I think that the technology has gotten there in the last 18 to 24 months where publishers can do that now, where I think in the past you couldn't. And for somebody like us, we said, we're just available direct, and that's about it.
Yeah, that's really exciting that it's happening right now, that publishers now feel like they have that control.
Exactly. It's been a good time, and I think that again, these last, since the beginning of last year, I think has been an exciting time where a lot of good things have happened, and I think again, it's good for publishers, but I think it's good for the buyers as well.
I've also seen a lot of publishers feel like they're in the driver's seat when it comes to owning the conversation. A lot of the training that goes on is often from the publisher to the buyer, because publishers have been able to take advantage of a lot of summits around programmatic, a lot of information that's out there that's very kind of publisher-centric. And so I feel like that itself puts the publisher in control of, let me teach you how to do this. Let me show you how to be a better buyer. Let me show you how to access the good inventory.
It's a great point. We actually, in the last few weeks, have started going out to a lot of agencies and trading desks with kind of our best practices from programmatic. And when we put it together, I was a little worried that we'd get a lot of, we're not that interested in what you guys think and what do you guys know and whatever. And I've been really pleasantly surprised about how everyone's been really engaged and interested and really feel like we're providing value. Even though we often only have one perspective on exactly what's happening, they've been very much listening to what we're saying, what we've learned, what we know. And I think that buyers are willing to listen, and they do feel like publishers have a lot of value to bring to the equation, which is great. And I think, and probably is another change that's occurred over time as well.
From Pulsepoint's perspective, we've also seen likewise receptivity. That is, teaching them how to use the platform and all its power really does unlock buying.
Yeah, it's and I will also say I feel like the world is changing, where I do feel like there's a lot more cases where we are partners now, and it's not kind of a seller, or buyer/vendor relationship. It's more like we're partners. Like, we are bringing value to the table. You are bringing value via money to the table. We are working together to get the best for for the respective advertiser we're both trying to work hard for. And that feeling of partnership is happening more and more, and less a list of demands and more a, how do we do this together? How do we make this work? What's your recommendation? What's the best thing we can do here?
Likewise, I think that the scales are leveling now between the two sides. That is, there's a lot of transparency that's coming about as a result of this. And so with that kind of leveling of the playing field, both sides understand what's transacting at a fair price.
Exactly, and there is more transparency happening. There's still more to come for sure, but that transparency is helping as well. And technologies like header bidding, like private marketplaces, really start to bring those things to light. And in this kind of best practices document that I mentioned earlier, one of the first things we do is set up the expectation that what we're all trying to do here is deliver the best value, inventory, audience, whatever, for the advertiser. Because I feel like as sellers, when we're doing that and we're doing a great job delivering for the advertiser, that's when we get renewals and people come back and they want to spend more. And the agency wins because they're giving their client exactly what they want. And their client wins because they're actually talking to the consumer they want to talk to with the message they want to put out there. And I think that is a thing that people lose sight of that sometimes, that we're all actually trying to do the same thing. And I think that these technologies and market changes are making people more and more realize that fact.
To what degree is header bidding a part of that conversation?
I think it's a big part. It's a huge buzzword. I think, when you say header bidding, a lot of people turn their head, which may be nerdy, but actually happens. So I think that's a really good thing. I think it has been a massive sea change in terms of the way programmatic is viewed, and I think it's something that we've been educating people about over the last 18 to 24 months and getting people to understand what that is. Mostly buyers, but we talk to publishers sometimes too, and want to help give our own feedback and advice. So it's obviously a huge thing that's occurred in pretty recent history.
Okay, we talked about the problems. Let's talk about some of the solutions publishers can use to retake the high ground. How did Cafe Media decide to fight back against buyer control and really own your audience?
I think that we didn't even realize when we got into header bidding specifically that was something that would help us do a much better job on the programmatic side in terms of owning our audience and owning our inventory. That wasn't even our initial thought process. Our thought process was about the fact that we knew that there was demand out there, and we knew that there were buyers who wanted to buy our inventory programmatically, and we weren't set up to do that. And I think with the standard programmatic methods, it didn't work for us. So we were trying to figure out how do we, what technology can we use that would allow us to kind of, meet these buyers' needs and be able to get that demand that's out there and make that happen. So to some level, the ability, once we started using header bidding in particular, that's when we kind of turned around and realized that, wow, this actually gives us a lot more control and a lot more kind of visibility into what we're doing and how we package things and how what we do really helps us do a better job in the marketplace. So it was almost like a second thought for us, which is sort of funny because it wasn't the way we went into it, and we realized what a great benefit it was when we got there.
To what degree do your buyers understand that they're now competing against every demand source in your stack?
It's a mixed bag. We work with dozens of different buyers at this point on the programmatic side, probably 100 plus, and there are very varying levels of sophistication. Some exceptionally sophisticated, they know everything, they know everything about everything. They come to us with a lot of great feedback and advice, and then some people who are still talking to us about, what kind of AdX first look PMP they can set up, and using terminology and thought process from 3 years ago. So I think it's a spectrum in between those 2 points. So it's really all over the board in terms of what people understand, and we're trying to educate people. And I think events like this are a great opportunity to try and just get the message out there about what are all these technologies, how do they work, how do they bring value to buyers and sellers.
Let's talk about header bidding in particular. How does it give you more control over your inventory?
It gives us a lot of control in the sense that, if nothing else, it allows us to expose every single impression that we have. So now buyers can see everything we have, and then that allows us to really package things up in a way that makes sense for us and we think makes sense to buyers as well. Where before, in the old programmatic world, we were only letting people see a small swath of our inventory. So it didn't make a lot of sense to really set up all these configurations and settings for how to organize it. Now that it's like, here's everybody, here's our uniques, here's our billion impressions that we're making available, here's all these different things that we're putting out there, here's a whole bunch of slices on that, and really letting us organize it and letting us package it in a way that makes a lot of sense to, I think, help buyers understand what they're doing.
Are there any other problems that header bidding is solving for you?
One of the big things was allowing us to know, for literally every impression, what the value is there, and letting that be passed through to our ad server and letting us figure out what we want to do in any given case, where again in the old world of programmatic it was kind of a massive average where we knew that this programmatic partner would give us an average fill of X and a CPM of Y, and here's what the value was, and that was it. We had no idea to know that, wow, this impression is actually worth $12 and this one's worth 20 cents. We didn't know that, whereas now we really know for every single impression kind of what that actual value is, which is a really great thing. For one, it allows us to decision much better in terms of what we want to serve when or not, but secondarily, it gives us a lot of data about our audience and what audiences are the most valuable and what things need to be packaged better and what things people are moving towards and how trends are changing over time. And that intelligence at an impression and user level is really very valuable.
And the higher CPMs don't hurt.
Absolutely.
Now, prior to header bidding, there were decisions that sometimes needed to be made about platforming, like which platform would go ahead and go first for the others. That is, these kind of decisioning about platform level waterfalling decisions. Do you remember that time? Did you have that issue?
We didn't have much of it because, again, we didn't have much remnant inventory, so it wasn't even worth our while to have a very deep waterfall in terms of who we were kind of daisy chaining between. So we had probably 2 people, maybe 3 we were working with at different points or different inventory pools, but that was about it. But I can definitely understand how that order really mattered, and it changed all the time, and how to do things required a lot of work that doesn't exist anymore.
Also, private marketplace deals worked on some platforms better than on others, or that sometimes buyers requested that, oh, I really want to run my deal through platform X, not platform Y. Was that a headache to manage?
So yeah, we definitely saw that where people would come and say we wanted to be in platform A or B or C, and often for us, because we only actually worked with 2 partners usually, if somebody said C, we said, well, we can't really work with you. So we were setting things up in our kind of 2 basic platforms we were working with, but definitely saw that friction in terms of like, well, we need to get your supply here, which never made any sense to me because the supply was the same regardless. That seems to be going away now, which has been a really good thing.
Should publishers even go all in on a single platform, or should they diversify?
We think diversification is really important, and we're working with a number of partners there. I think it's important to understand what the true benefits, the incrementality, the uniqueness of each platform is, and make sure that you're not just kind of duplicating the same capabilities and demand. But I think that there's a lot of players out there that have very unique demand and unique capabilities that make sense to bring in multiple partners that can help you in different areas of what your needs are.
When it comes to functionality, what's one of the features that you really look for that really stands out for you?
I mean, for us, a lot of it is, it's about speed. It is about uniqueness. And to some level, it's not a given capability. It's more that I don't want just another header bidding partner that just has standard open market demand, because I've got that 5 times over right now, and I don't need a 6 to do that for me. I need somebody that is bringing something special and different to the table, whether it is special buyers or special technology or special, just truly unique demand, and want to understand what that is. And then for us, when we bring somebody in, we're really doing a lot of testing about, well, is this truly incremental, and is this really making us more money, or is this just shifting dollars from over here to over here and didn't really do anything for us at the end of the day?
Yeah, those bake-offs are critical, and I really feel like that's where a lot of platform decisioning really comes down to is, it's one thing to have sales team go ahead and say, yeah, we're better than X, but can you actually prove your stuff? And so at Pulsepoint, we actually partake in a lot of bake-offs between other platforms.
Yeah, I think it's critical, and I think it's good that the transparency is there, and I think that the people who the programmatic partners that are doing a really good job with what's unique about them and what's incremental are winning, and the ones that don't have much that's unique are losing. And while that's sad for them, like, that's good for the market, and that's been a really good thing.
Now, on that subject of transparency, is there some way publishers can make the value of their inventory clearer to buyers, like making it easier for them to find the inventory they want?
I think that this is something I've been thinking about a lot and trying to figure out how we do that sort of thing. There's a lot of solutions out there that I think are trying to solve the problem that don't seem to be doing that great of a job. So a lot of what we've done on our side to date has been to do it ourselves and really get out into the world and talk to the buyers and say what we have and really be clear about it. I think that a solution that really clearly could lay out, from a seller perspective, here's what we have, here's what's great, here's why it's valuable to you, and that a buyer could look at it and say, wow, this really is something that's valuable to me, or say, no, this is not valuable to me, and I'm going to move on to the next one. I think a solution that could do that would be a great thing.
With header bidding, a lot more impressions are exposed to your buyers. Are they appreciating those extra impressions?
As far as I know, yes. I don't know if the DSPs love it that much, but I do know the buyers like it because they get to decide. I think that's the best thing of all. And I think we're even seeing that changing where, now with header bidding, often what I say to people is, not only is this as good as a direct buy, this is better than a direct buy. You should be paying more money for this than for a direct buy because you get all of our inventory and you get to choose the ones you want. And we can still do our targeting for you and put our data on it and give you text and a lot of other things. But for this advertiser to say, I've got my own CRM database, I've got my own platforms that I'm using and my own DMP, let me pick what I want, that's a great capability that actually increases the value of the inventory beyond what it even was before.
So that's what we see with header bidding. With this kind of increased competition is we're seeing those eCPMs rise. Do you see that flipping where eventually programmatic demand, in fact, outbids in terms of eCPM, the direct sold demand?
We see that happen in some cases already, not across the board for sure, but we definitely see it happening. I think that, I think ultimately for the ecosystem of publishers and buyers to be healthy, I think it will need to get there, and we're beginning to see it happen. I think to some level it's fairly early days because I do really honestly believe that header bidding is a big part of why this is happening now. And to be honest, it's only been something that has been prevalent in the market for really about a year now, if not less in a lot of cases.
Let's talk about inventory packaging. How are you best executing on that?
It's complex because I do think that the tools to do packaging that we use right now aren't as sophisticated as we want, even to the point of, we have, across our sites, we have Hispanic audiences, we have, beauty content, we have parenting content, we have certain age ranges, and to slice up the inventory and say, here is Hispanic women, 25 to 54, fashion content, A is small, but B is actually quite complex to package. It's easy to kind of do one layer of packaging, maybe two layers. Once you start getting to that third layer is where we find that it gets pretty cumbersome and you start ending up with lots and lots of kind of inventory segments that A are small and B are hard to manage. I think that we're pushing for kind of better tools to help organize things better because I think that it's necessary. And then again, I think it helps buyers choose that I want that pool and this pool and this pool and these, these 17 different pools that were hard to slice up before, but as the tools make it easier and better, we'll give more value to the buyers.
With that, though, I think comes challenges from the buyer end. With all those different segments that you're able to slice and dice, the question is, how can they effectively put enough time and effort and optimization against each of those segments so they achieve particular goals for the buyers?
Yeah, and it's a really good point. And I also think to some level, and I don't know if this is happening, but I do think some level of standardization would be great here. This isn't exactly the same, but we're actually working with one of the trading desks right now in terms of organizing our deals in their DSPs so we can help them do a better job figuring out what it is. And we look at the naming and the categorization that they put in place, and it's really good, but it clearly was done over a long period of time and has changed and is incorrect in some cases. And creating some standardization where we're all speaking the same language would be really good in terms of making it so what we're packaging is actually correctly communicated on the buyer side.
Now, is this packaging happening in private marketplace deal environments, in the open exchange? Are you adding additional variables and attributes to the request? Like, how are you facilitating this targeting?
On the private marketplace side, it's in a big way for us, and it is deal naming and clear communication to buyers and being very specific about every deal ID and what it means. In the open market, we are actually pushing some additional data through, but not a ton right now, and it's an area of opportunity for us.
What about data? Are you charging an incremental amount of money for those data packages?
We tend to charge extra for data. We don't do it all the time. It does depend on the data element that we're talking about and the buyer and the scale and things like that. But kind of by default, we are charging additional for those. If nothing else, it limits the inventory. And I think that when somebody wants a particular segment, and again, using Hispanic audience is an easy one to talk about, when you want that segment, you want to make sure that you're winning. So I think if you don't price up, you end up in a case where the people who want that kind of more than somebody else end up losing to somebody who didn't really care so much about that given impression. So by paying that little premium for the data, they're also paying a premium for access, which I think is valuable.
To again touch on some of the benefits of header bidding, comes scale. And scale is often one of the biggest barriers to getting in the way of effective private marketplace deals. Are you able to execute private marketplace deals on your header bidding inventory?
We are, and we've been able to get pretty good scale across a number of PMPs at this point, but it definitely is a challenge, and I think it's a challenge on the sell side and the buy side, that even though we're making a very large number of impressions available in a very large audience, and even though we're dealing with some very large advertisers that we know have very large budgets, sometimes those two don't meet up that well and the scale isn't there. So figuring out how to make that scale happen is an important part of what we spend our time on.
Have you had any success in having the buyer to remove their data that they're using to target and then to trust your data? I'm using, let's say, a third-party data provider to go and identify Hispanics, but you have Hispanic-oriented sites where you have high assurance that all your users are Hispanic. How's that working?
It's getting better by the day, actually, and that's a big thing that we focus on, is making sure that we're not being duplicative in terms of the data we're applying. Not only does it reduce access, it increases costs, it causes a lot of issues, and I actually will say we're actually getting more and more requests from buyers where they say, can you do this for us? Whether it is a particular data element or brand safety or high viewability or some other metric that they could do themselves and pay for, but we can do it essentially for free or for a much lower cost.
Okay, so these things are great for digital publishers, but can they help traditional publishers as well?
I don't see any reason why anyone can't take advantage of this. I think to some level, I think partly it's internal, issues and culture that need to be changed sometimes more than technology. I think sometimes the technology can be a bit of a challenge, but I know that many of the partners that we work with make it pretty easy to get these things live and make them work. So I think that I really see no reason why almost anybody can't get into this and get started and at least dip their toes in the water.
Yeah, all you need is DFP.
Exactly.
How do you see the buy-sell dynamic developing over the next year? Is it swinging back in the publisher's favor? What do they still have to do?
I think, again, a lot of it comes back to quality, and I think recently and this is beyond the scope of this conversation, but these topics in the media about the ANAs and investigations into transparency and things like that, I think that those things are shining a light on places all over the market where there's inefficiencies or problems that need to be dealt with. And I think that, again, the great thing is the good thing about that from my perspective is that it's making it so quality is mattering more and more, where I think whether it's premium publishers or private marketplaces or different either technologies or kind of audience groups that really matter, I think that's having a really good impact. Where again, like we as sellers want to make sure that we can work closely with the buyers and we're all trying to do the same thing. And I think that transparency and quality and things like that I think are making a big difference in terms of making it so it is a level playing field for everybody, and we're bringing value to the equation and buyers are bringing value to the equation, and we're all working together.
Do the buyers have any responsibility in this equation?
I think absolutely, and I think again a lot of it does come down to this idea of partnership. It's like, let's work together. Let's not make this a list of demands or something where it's unrealistic and everybody knows it. Let's try to do something where we're actually making something great for either the end consumer or for the buyers themselves.
When it comes to header bidding, it doesn't really seem like it's any skin off of the buyer's back. It really seems like a lot of that burden, because it falls to the platforms, that is, the exchanges and the DSPs of the world need to go ahead and kind of juggle those extra impressions that go back and forth, but to the end partners, it seems like they just both mutually benefit.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great thing about it is, and to some level, the buyers have the least work of all to do, because the publishers do have to do some level of configuration and technology setup and things like that. That's not a ton, but it's some work, whereas the buyers get this great benefit where this technology that has little to do directly with them is a massive boon to their ability to get access, to get scale, to get quality.
How was that header bidding setup process for you?
We've done it a number of times now. We work with a number of partners, and they're all different from each other, but I think that they've all been, relatively straightforward, which has been really great. And then I think, then part of it is actually the funny point of training buyers, where people, when we started talking about it 18 months ago, people said to us, what is this? Is this really complicated? Is this different than what I've done before? And we said, no, it's the same. And they were shocked at how it was the same, and it was just as easy, but they got all these great benefits.
So Paul, do you have a secret weapon when it comes to rebalancing the scales between yourself and the buyers?
For us, I think it's been private marketplaces. I think that having a direct relationship with the buyer has been great. And for us, while open market is valuable and it really brings a lot of scale and really good, dollars, I think private marketplaces has been great, where the ability to call somebody on the phone or email them and say, hey, what's going on here? What can we help you with? And have that conversation is a massive thing where programmatic isn't removing the people from the equation. I think it's making people more effective in terms of what they're doing. And I think PMPs are a way that buyers and sellers can keep working together and keep getting scale, but making sure we're still having a conversation, not completely relying on the system alone.
We love how private marketplace deals and header bidding work in conjunction to go ahead and make sure that those private marketplace deals scale. Have you seen that play out?
Absolutely. And again, it's very case by case, but we've seen a number of private marketplaces deals scale that I know would never have happened in a traditional programmatic setup, where now actually they're getting this capability where, because of the inventory, because of the access, because of our ability to target much better on our side, many more of the deals are getting scale than ever would have before.
Any other tricks of the trade you're willing to share with our listeners here?
I said it before, but I think quality is important. I think that it's been a great exercise for us to make sure that what we're doing across the board is very good and very high quality, whether it is, again, audience or non-human traffic or viewability or any number of other things. I was at an event recently talking to a guy I know who works at a big TV network, and people were complaining about viewability around us, and I looked at him and I said, I love viewability. I think it's the best thing that's ever happened because it makes it so I can say, like, categorically put a stamp of approval. This inventory is great. This audience we have is great. And he agreed with me completely because I think that it makes it so when you have good stuff, you have a very easy way to go out into the world and say, this is really good stuff, and speak about the facts rather than having to sell so hard on something that you can't prove otherwise.
That's been one of the biggest advantages of private marketplace deals, is the ability to go ahead and package viewability as a characteristic of the deal. It's a huge thing for us, and at this point we don't do anything except for high viewability deals because I think that's what any smart buyer wants at this point. And the people who aren't doing that, like, I'm not even sure I want to work with that closely, but being able to signal that and say, yes, this is a high viewability deal. When you buy this, you're going to get 70% or 80% or even 90% is a great thing where the buyers can look and say, okay, this makes my life easier and I know what I'm getting here. That's a really great thing. Are you commanding higher eCPMs as a result? We definitely are. And effectively it gets down to the true currency of the viewable impression. If you can charge $2 for 20% viewability, that means you can charge $9 for 90% viewability, and effectively it's the same thing that the buyer's getting at the end of the day, and it makes it so our inventory is more valuable because what we're putting out there is actually more valuable. Paul, that was a really good conversation. I really appreciate you joining us here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul and Chris, for that excellent discussion. Before we move on to the Q&A session, we wanted to remind everyone that the full recording of the webinar will be mailed out to everyone first thing tomorrow morning. And now we're going to go ahead and be joined by Matt Wheatland, who is the U.S. Director of Programmatic at dailymail.com for our Q&A segment. Let's open it up to the audience. You can submit a question at any time via the GoToWebinar interface, and we will do our best to answer it. We had a couple of really good ones come in over the course of the webinar, so we're going to go ahead and get started with those. And I'm going to go ahead and welcome our speakers here in just 1 second. Okay, great. First question. This is for both Chris and Matt. There have been hints that Google might change the way they handle delivery mechanisms so that better competition is allowed by all programmatic platforms. Do you think that this might kill header bidding?
Take a first pass at that one. For advertisers, header bidding doesn't only offer increased competition in the ad server, but also allows for cookie thinking. And that cookie thinking dramatically impacts fill, eCPM, and ultimately revenue. This is ultimately beneficial and would be lost without header bidding.
Speaker, just speak directly into it.
How about you, Matt? What have you seen?
Matt, looks like you might be muted. You can go ahead and unmute yourself now. Okay, looks like we're having a slight technical difficulty getting Matt on the line, but in the meantime, Chris, do you have any more thoughts on the potential of Google to sort of disrupt this header bidding that's been established? If not, we can move on right to the next question.
I mean, yeah, again, the cookies thing has huge impact, and having that cookies allows for audience-based buying that really unlocks the power of programmatic.
Great. Okay, on to the next section, or on to the next question, rather. When you were talking before, you mentioned that all of your external programmatic buys flow through header bidding. Why is that? So
well,
this is probably a question for Paul and Matt, but Chris, what are your thoughts?
Sure thing. I can try to fill in here. I'll say that we've heard an increasing number of publishers which are moving an ever-increasing amount of their business into their header bidding setup. It's essentially the trend, given all the benefits that we've talked about here on this call. People really want to go ahead and run ever more header bidding setups.
Great. And a question about how many bidders you have operating in your wrapper, and what is the sort of standard? How many bidding partners do you want? How many bidding partners can you actually have? Is there a limit?
At Pulsepoint, we've deployed header bidding setups on hundreds of sites. We have many publishers which have only our demand who are flowing through their header bidding setups, though we also go ahead and operate in setups where we're going to compete against 10 other bidders. And so there's always this question in the marketplace about latency, and there's this concern about latency. And a lot of publishers have been able to kind of crack that, effectively measuring the impact of one bidder versus 5 versus 10, and in often cases are not go ahead and seeing any impact by go ahead and ever increasing that number of bidders.
Great. I think we have Matt on the line now. Matt, what are your thoughts on how many bidding partners are you operating with at Daily Mail, and do you think it's working out for you that way?
Yeah, sure. First of all, sorry about that technical issue. So over at Daily Mail, we're running about 6 different header partners. We started about 2 years ago, started with the retargeted, saw some good uplift there, and then around about 18 months ago, we began to integrate a number of the core exchanges. So we're currently at 6, and we've seen really, really good uplift. I think there's sort of 3 main benefits that Paul touched on earlier as well, that sort of header bidding has given us. First, obviously, is greater exposure. So we can now let DSPs bid on every impression without that sort of filtered view of our inventory. Second is more competition. And I think this one's interesting. I think sort of the more competition within the ad server, not only from bids coming in from header partners, but against Google AdX dynamic allocation as well. So you get the uplift from the increased price pressure from your header bidders, and then you also get a big uplift across Google AdX, whereby dynamic allocation is now working that much harder within the ad server.
Yeah, that's actually something that we like to encourage when people are measuring the benefits of header bidding, is not only look at the increased amount of revenue coming in by way of header bidding, but how much harder AdX itself is working.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, I mean, it's also sort of the first exchanges that you integrate via header bidding. You'll obviously see really, really big uplift in yield and competition. Slowly but surely, you'll see diminishing returns. But it was interesting, something that we didn't necessarily realize, that although you're probably accessing the same portion of demand, you know, the same bidders, but through different channels, we carried on seeing good uplift all the way to the 6 header integration that we've got right now. And I know there's guys in market that have sort of upwards of 10 different header partners. So what I think is interesting is finding that sweet spot where you're still getting incremental uplift in yield and revenue, but it's worthwhile given the increased operational difficulties that come with header bidding.
Excellent, thanks, Matt. And to that point a bit, I'd like to take it back to the question we had prior. Could you get into a little bit about why you handle all of your external programmatic buys through header bidding? You said they flow through header bidding. Why is that?
Yeah, sure. So I guess the main reason, header bidding came around as an actual solution is it allows the publisher to essentially utilize information, usually price information, across the full scope of your inventory before you have to make an allocation decision out of the ad server. And that's pretty much the main reason. So we made a deliberate goal over the last 18 months to move completely away from passback tags and essentially not serve anything out of our ad server until we know the price that we're going to receive. And obviously header bidding, giving you that information up front, just lets you make much better decisions, much better pricing decisions within the ad server. And not just pricing decisions, it also now allows us, as Paul touched on earlier, around PMPs to decision on variables outside of price as well. So whether that's deal type, PMP, OMP, programmatic guaranteed, or potentially you've got wider trading deals, and you want to isolate specific bids for specific buyers in the ad server, header bidding allows us to do that, and we know we're then serving off the correct impression to the correct bidder.
Excellent, thanks, Matt. And as you're running all of your programmatic buys through header bidding, obviously Google has the potential to disrupt that, as we touched on a little bit earlier. So do you think that Google going ahead and changing those delivery mechanisms to allow more competition on programmatic platforms, do you think it will kill header bidding, or do you see header bidding as having its own sort of value aside from that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think there were quite a few industry articles back in April when Google announced this, and I think they're calling it EBDA, Exchange Bidder Dynamic Allocation, and it's definitely a good step forward, and it's I guess a real acknowledgement of the benefits of header bidding by Google, which is obviously the industry's largest player, and there's benefits of having server-to-server pipes. One of the things that I guess is kind of untested right now is how that would all play out. So I expect there will be some kind of dual approach. By no means do I think this will kill header bidding in the short or mid-term. I still think that header bidding gives us specific advantages that potentially you may or may not get with various server-to-server solutions. So as I just mentioned, being able to transact on different variables, so passing through to the ad server, specific pieces of information outside of price, who you can partner with as well. So if you're managing your own header integrations, you're not relying on any third party sort of having the, I guess, getting over the business hurdles of integrating what could be perceived as competitors. So if you're directly integrating these exchanges, you can integrate whoever you want. Header bidding is also arguably more transparent than some server-to-server solutions may be in terms of the information that we can get back on bids by specific buyers, DSPs, against specific users or sections of our inventory, and all the information that we can now collect from our various header bidders, we can now use that to help make decisions across other areas of our business because we have so much more information about how buyers are valuing our inventory. And then of course there's always the point of control, and that publishers, it's good for publishers, I think, to diversify and not necessarily move all into one infrastructure or one platform. And in a world where cards are stacked against publishers, I think transparency and control for the publisher to make their own decisions is absolutely vital. So, buy-side bidders, they often have a lot more data and a lot more functionality than publishers have. So anything that publishers can do to bring that control back and really own their monetization infrastructure, I think is really important. So I would probably foresee, I guess, a dual approach where some exchanges you may be happy to plug in through server-to-server pipes, but then other exchanges that you're specifically using for I don't know, PnP functionality, or they give you fantastic reporting, that would probably still sit outside of the Google ecosystem.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Matt. We'll go ahead and give people another just 30 seconds or so to get any last-minute questions in, and we'll do our best to answer them. But if not, I want to go ahead and thank Chris, Paul, and Matt, and of course our sponsor, Pulsepoint, for an excellent webinar and for bringing this to you guys today. And of course, I want to thank all of you for attending. Keep an eye on your inboxes tomorrow morning for that link to the recording so that you can watch this on demand, catch up on anything you might have missed, and you know, refresh your thoughts. And so unless anybody else has any questions, I think that's going to do it for us today. So thank you, everyone, and please enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.